Welcome back to the Crochet Crowd, as well as my friends over at Yarnspirations.com. I'm your host Mikey. Today we're going to do the Crochet Comfort Shawl. This is a relatively easy shawl and I'm going to take you through start to finish of making this project together. But first, let's listen to this real quick. This video has sound alerts added. When you hear this sound, it will be your signal that the segment is finishing up. Press stop and crochet the instructions and then press play again to continue along in your project. So today we have a pattern and it's actually relatively simple up until you get to the base area here. There's some beautiful stitch work that goes on down here and there's a matter of repeating the number of rows in order to get the look. One of these things about this particular shawl is that you have to watch your stitch count. So because the base is a really unique stitch down here, you have to watch and make sure that you nail it on the right row in order to get it to go. So you just can't make this particular area any size you wish. So let me take you a little bit through the other part of this pattern right here. So here's what it looks like. So here's the middle right here and it extends as a triangle and you're going to notice that there is ladder work that you can see on her back. So let me just get that other photo up here for you. So do you see that it's got ladders here? So there's one here, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So there's 5 of these ladder pieces that you see and you want to count those as you're going doing this project. So you see it 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then you see the 5th one. So the 5th one has a secondary color if you wish. So I'm using these ladders as for myself in order for myself to make sure that I get it to the right size that I need, because you see the fabulous stitch work down here. It relies on this last row that you see in the lighter blue to be the right stitch count in order to make that happen. So it's one of those ones you have to pay attention to your stitch counts. So we're gonna start off in the top area right here. We're gonna use a 5mm size H crochet hook today. We're gonna use some Caron Simply Soft in order to make this. So it's actually really not a hard pattern to be able to follow, and then we're gonna take you through line by line down here at the base. So I'll get you started here, leave that with you, and then bring you line by line as we go down through here. To make it easier, there's also a crochet diagram that you'll see the amount of stitch work that you see. So you can see it starts off in the center of her back and then it extends outward as we get bigger and bigger. So there's 2 rows of solid trebles and then there's 1 row of this like ladder work. It's treble work, chain 1, treble, chain 1, and so on. You will notice that right in the center line right here as you're doing this, there are always gonna be 2 trebles, chain 2, 2 trebles right in the center, and it's actually really easy once you get that to go. So the things that you need to pay attention to, especially when you're in the ladder work, is that the one right before the edge right or before the corner is left empty, and you just have to watch those, and those will give you good indications if you're going off the trail. And for example, if you're doing treble, chain 1, treble, chain 1, and you end up right on the one right before this particular corner, then you know something's wrong. And I did that and I accidentally skipped a stitch somewhere on the row below. So that was I was able to find my mistake. So the key is to kind of watch your stitch counts as you go, because it matters when you go to do this edging that you see right here that is really quite stunning. So without further ado, let's grab our crochet hook and yarn, and I'm gonna get you and show you what to do here, and then I'm gonna leave that for you, and then we'll carry on through the base. For today's tutorial, I'm going to keep the colors that are being changed consistent with the pattern, but I'm just using different colors, and so where I change the color in the pattern, it will also change for you as well. So we're going to start off with the slip knot right in the very starting and insert your 5mm size H crochet hook. So to begin, we need to chain a total of 4. So 1, 2, 3, and 4, and insert the hook into the beginning chain just like so, and then yarning over, pulling it through everything, and you create the center of the back of the shawl. Let's move along to row number 1. To begin row number 1, it's always gonna be the same when it's row number 1, and just watch how we're gonna do this because we need to establish the triangle right off the bat. So we're going to chain a total of 4. So 1, 2, 3, and 4, and that counts as 1 treble. We're now gonna treble 5 times into the center of that ring. So just wrap the hook twice to treble and going into the center of the ring, and then pull through, and then pull through 2 and 2 and 2 all the way back to the top, and treble again, and you want a total of 5 trebles altogether. So when you add that chaining of 4 that you started with, that will give you a total of 6 trebles when you're done. Okay, so that's just as a helpful tip in order for you to stay balanced. So right now I have 5 trebles that I've just created. So with this chain of 4, that counts as one of them. So there's technically 5, and I'm gonna treble one more time. So as I stated in the preview, is that whenever there's a corner, okay, the corner piece at the end, there's always going to be chain 2, so that's an easy one to remember. And we're going to come down in the center. See how I'm just wrapping this starting yarn around as if it's part of the ring, then can get lost. So now you're going to treble back into that ring a total of 6 times. So that makes it equivalent on both sides. Just like that. Just keeping an eye on my counts. It's really important because you're right in the start to get it right the first time. So now I have my 6 trebles here. So if I'm looking at it like I would be from the pattern, this is what it looks like at this point. So with the chaining of 4 plus the other 5, that gives you 6, and then you have 6 down the other side. Let's turn this now, and we're going to go now in row number 2. So regardless if it's row number 2 all the way until we get to the really fancy work at the edge of this project, every one time that you go to start one of these, there will always be 3 trebles into the same one. So the chaining of 4 to start is considered 1. You'll treble 2 more times to give you a total of 3, and then when you get to the other side there will be a total of 3 trebles in that one too. So that's kind of what we're looking at. So let's start off, and we're going to chain total of 4. So 1, 2, 3, and 4, that counts as a treble, and into the same stitch right underneath I want you to treble 2 more times. Okay, so that allows it to stay going out as a triangle. So now you're going to put 1 treble in each one of the trebles that you have left. So let's do that. You notice I'm not counting her at all. I'm just relying on my stitch work to be accurate. So it's not something that you have to overly count. So you go right into that last one, and then you have your chain 2 space. So in the chain 2 space, whenever it's this kind of row, or it's the one with the ladder work in it with the trebles and chain 1s, you're always going to put in 2 trebles first, followed by chain 2, and 2 trebles once again. Now you're going to go down the other side. So each one of these trebles are going to have 1 treble, except for the very last one that's going to have a total of 3. So let's just do that for row number 2. So as we get bigger in this, I'm not going to take you through the entire row. I'm just going to kick you off and get you started, tell you what to do, and then we'll meet you at the end of each one of the rows that we do it at. So remember, the very final one is right here. It's in the turning chain. So go right into a chain, not to the space itself. Go right into a chain, and you want to put in your 3 trebles into that same stitch there so that you can maintain the balance of this project. So this is row number 2. So you see it's nice and solid, just like that. Okay, so let's turn our work and go for row number 3. An easy way to remember this pattern, there's 2 trebles that are solid, so 2 rows that are solid, and then it's going to be a ladder. So then 2 solids and then a ladder. So it just kind of makes sense. So right now we have our 2 solids in, and now we're going to create the ladder work. So as I mentioned before, every time we start a row, it's going to be chaining of 4, and then 2 more trebles into the same one. So that counts as 3 trebles all within the side there, within the first stitch. So now we're going to start, and we're going to create our chain 1. So we're going to chain 1 first, skip 1, and then treble into the next. And you're going to do that all the way to the point. So chain 1, skip 1, treble into the next. Chain 1, skip 1, treble into the next. Chain 1, skip 1, treble into the next. So as I mentioned in the preview, so you're going to have 1 that's left over that you're not going to worry about before you get to an edge, so don't worry about that one. So you chain up 1, and then you're just going to go right into the corner of the chain 2 and put in 2 more trebles first, chain 2, and 2 more trebles all within that chain 2 space. So now you're physically turning. So when you start down this side, don't start on the very first treble. You want to chain 1 first, skip the first treble and go to the second and treble again. Okay, so then chain 1, skip 1 and treble into the next. Chain 1, skip 1, treble into the next. Chain 1, skip 1, treble into the next. So right where I am right now is that I have 2 stitches left, 1 and 2. So I'm gonna chain 1 and I'm skipping this one and going right into the last, into the turning chain, and I'm gonna put in 3 trebles there. So this was a row number 3. So what I'm gonna do is that I'm going to get you started on row number 4 and just to let you know where things are, and then you can do all of this because it's a matter of repeating this pattern over and over. So let's turn our work and go for row number 4. So row number 4 is a solid just like you had done already before. So what are we gonna do to start? You know the answer, it's chaining of 4. So 1, 2, 3 and 4, and you're gonna treble 2 more times into that same one to keep that triangle growing out. Like so. So now we have to fill in these particular spaces. So you want to watch these chain 1 spaces. So you remember that you have 3 when you started, so there's no chain 1 spaces there, and then it starts. So the first 2 are going to be 1 treble in each. Okay, and then the next one is a chain 1 space. So you're gonna fill that chain 1 space in. And then the next one has a treble, as you can see right below it, and then the next one is a chain 1 space. So you see what you're doing, you're just filling in the stitches as you're going across. So the chain 1 space, the next one's into a treble, and so forth. So you're gonna do that all the way to the point, and in the point you're gonna put in 2 trebles, chain 2, 2 trebles, and then you're gonna move down and just fill them all in, including the chain 1 spaces, right into the very end. So what I'll do is that I'll leave that with you, and so you can get that done and maybe at the end of this row. So as you come to the end of the row, remember everything is getting a treble, including that final turning chain, which is the next one right here. Don't forget that one, and you're gonna put in your total of 3 trebles into that same one so that you can bring balance to your project. And that was the conclusion of row number 4. So now we're gonna turn, and remember what we're looking for is that you were looking for 2 solids, so 1 and 2, and then you have a ladder. So then there's a solid here, so the next one has to be solid, and then a ladder again. So I'm just referring to it as a ladder because that's what it reminds me of. So row number 5, chaining at 4, and then we put 2 more trebles into that same starting to keep the balance. And then every one of the trebles is going to get 1 treble, and then in the corner what are you gonna do? Right? You're gonna do 2 trebles, chain 2, 2 trebles, and then treble each one of all the way to the end, and the very last one will have 2 or 3 trebles right in the very end. I'm gonna leave that for you. This is row number 5. So I'm coming to the end of row number 5. It's a solid row, and then the very last one, remember, it's gonna have 3 trebles into the turning chain. So don't forget to do that to keep your balance. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take you to levels number 6 to row 6. Let's turn our work. So just remember that you have to have 2 solids, so 1 and 2, ladder, 1 and 2, and now this is a ladder. So it's always gonna be 2 solids and then a ladder and etc. So I'm going to show you the ladder one more time just to make sure that you got it right, and you're going to chain up a total of 4. And then you're going to treble a total of 2 more times into the same one. So that gives you a total count of 3. So remember the ladder. So you chain 1, skip 1, and treble into the next. And you do that all the way to the point. So chain 1, skip 1. So when I'm just gonna do this and talk to you while I'm making my way to the point. So when I was doing the trial the other night or last night, I realized that I had screwed up because my ladder did not end up in the right spot. And in fact this is take 2. I had done the same mistake twice, and it's just because I'm half paying attention, I think. So it's one of those areas where if you're screwing up in your counts, this is where you're gonna notice it on this row. And how will you notice it? I will show you that in just a moment. but I'm just making my way to the point. You notice that I'm not counting any stitches. I'm just letting the visuals do the work. So this is actually take 2. What I did is on the last take, that when I did this in row number 5, I forgot to put my chain 2 right in the corner here, so it looked like it was all solid. So do you see where I am right now? I'm in the stitch right previous to, or like the second last one previous to the point, so that I know them right. So last night I ended up right in the same stitch as the last one when I was doing this, and I'd realized that I had missed a stitch in the row below causing that. So just watch that. So chain up 1 and then go into the point for 2 trebles, chain 2 and 2 trebles once again to make that turn, and then you're gonna move your way down the other side. So chain up 1, skip 1 and treble into the next. So I won't drag you any further on this one here, and I'll see at the end of this row. So chain up 1, skip 1 and treble in the next, and I'll see at the end of this row. So currently you're just finishing up row number 6. And so row number 6 is just going to just want to watch that as you're going all the way, because we have to make sure that our counts are right and for the remaining of the amount of rows that we need. So I'm gonna take you to the diagram of what we're gonna do next, and so you just have to repeat this last 2 rows. So just do solids again and then a ladder, and solids again and a ladder. So you're on number 6 right now, so you have to go to all the way to row number 14. So just think 2 solids and then a ladder, 2 solids and then a ladder. And then what we're going to do is that we need to change colors and do 2 rows of a new color in order to get it. So let me take you to the pattern and show you where you're gonna go, and you already know the stitch work now, so now it's a matter of just getting it right. So looking at the picture of the shawl lying down, so you've done the beginning and now we're on row number 6. So it's the ladder work that is right in here. This is where we are. So what you have to just do is do 2 more solids and then a ladder, 2 more solids again and then a ladder, and then 2 more solids, and then this color is done. So all you're just gonna do is fasten off that color and do the same stitch work again for 2 rows. One is a ladder and one is a solid of using a different color right here. And what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna let you get to there, and then we're gonna pick up. So make sure you do all of this first. Use this picture as a guide for yourself to make sure that you follow it. I wasn't sure myself, so I wanted just a verification of it laying down so I can see it. So remember, you're right here. Right, you just did the ladders, so you're doing 2 solids and a ladder, 2 solids and a ladder, 2 solids, and then you're changing color, and then do a ladder and then a solid. So you're just keeping in balance. So when I come back, we're gonna start this area down here right where it gets all really fancy, and I'll see you back there in just a moment. So here we are on the diagram, and we're now going to start and do all this fancy footwork. So right now we're ending on row number 16. This is the second color of the solid that is already done. Okay, so just think about it. This is already done. It's just there as a guide. And then we're going to do number 17 together. Okay, and we're just going to do 17 together, and then we're going to then move across and then start doing the fancy footwork. But before we do 17, we have to change that color first to the outside color, and then we're gonna go across, and you can see that it's 1 double crochet in each except for the very corners, and I'll cover that next. And so I'll see you here in just a moment. So just to recap on where you are right now, we finished off row number 6 already before together. Then we did 2 solids and then a ladder, 2 solids and then a ladder, 2 solids, and then we changed color and we did a ladder, and then we did 1 solid. So right now what we're gonna do is we're gonna pick up on the edge now. We're gonna change our color, and we're gonna do that fancy outside edging right here right now. So I'm gonna start a new color and just gonna create a slip knot just for extra security and insert my hook in, and I'm gonna come to the outside of the first treble that's here, and then I'm gonna join it to the top. I'm gonna let this straggler stay down on top of the line so I can trap it underneath. So I'm going to just attach with the slip stitch, and then I'm going to chain a total of 3. So 1, 2, 3. It counts as a double crochet. Before we'd always been doing 4s. This time it's 3, and then you're gonna put in 2 double crochets into the same one. So you have a total of 3 if you count the 3 chains as 1. So now all you're just gonna do is move your way down the line, or sorry, I've been just double crochet and move your way down the line. It may get a little bit of a hard thing for you to start double crocheting once again because you've been wrapping as a treble, and you're just gonna double crochet, and then I'll meet you at the first corner and I'll show you what to do. So as you make your way to the corner, this is the point right down in the lower back of the person, and you were going to just double crochet in each of the trebles, and then in the chain 2 space you're going to double crochet twice, once and twice, and then chain 2 and then double crochet 2 more times into that same one, and then all you're just gonna do is make your way back down the other side and just 1 double crochet in each treble, and the very final one that you want to do in the turning chain, make sure you put in 3 double crochets, and I'm gonna leave that for you. And this is row number 17, and when I come back we're gonna review the chart and get you started, and we're now gonna start getting a little more complicated. Okay, so here we are in the project. We're about to start row number 18, and I'm gonna take you a bit now to the pattern to show you what to do, and then we're gonna cover that, and we're just gonna carefully go through the rest of this shawl together piece by piece. So let's start row number 18. We're technically gonna come from the other side and work our way back. So it's typical to see instructions like this. So you see that it's a double crochet leaning over, and you see that there's a total of 2 chains. So if I'm just considering to go on the other side, this is considered chaining of 5. So we're gonna chain 5, and then we're going to then double crochet in each of the next 7, skip 2, chain 2 and cluster into the next one, skip 2, chain 2 and crochet double crochet into the next 7, and we keep doing that up until we get to near to the point. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get you started here, and then I'm gonna meet you at the point, and we're gonna review that and then get you started again just there. So let's do row number 18 together. So row number 18, let's begin. We're gonna chain 5. So 1, 2, 3, there's your double crochet, 4, 5 is your chain 2. It doesn't look like it right now, but it will. In the very next stitch I want you to double crochet into that one plus 6 more in the row. So that's 1, let's count it together, and we're gonna do 2 and 3, 4 and 5, 6 and 7. Now we're going to chain 2 and then skip 2 chains down here, so 1 and 2, and I want you to cluster into the third one. So wrap that hook going in, pull through 2 and hold, and do it again. So wrap into the same one, pull through 2 and hold, and then wrap and going into the same one, pull through 2 and hold, and now you have 4 loops on your hook. Yarn over and pull through all 4. And now I want you to chain 2 again. So 1 and 2, and now I want you to skip 2, 1 and 2, and I want you to double crochet the next 7. So we're just gonna keep repeating this idea all the way until we get to the point, and then we'll just do something slightly different there, and then we'll do the same thing going down the other side. So how many double crochets in a row did we need? We needed a total of 7. So that's your secret number for this one. Okay, so you got 6 and 7, chain 2, skip 2 and cluster into the third one. Once you get used to these clusters, they don't take a lot of time, and then chain 2, skip 2 and then double crochet in the next 7. Please do that all the way till you get closest to the point. I'll see you there in just a moment. So now coming all the way to the point, I just got my 7 in here as you can see, and now we're ready to turn the corner for the point. So to do that we're going to chain up 2, and you're gonna notice that you have 2 stitches left over here in the double crochet. You're gonna skip right over top of those, and then you're going to cluster right into the chain 2 space. So cluster again, so get your in there, get that section in, and then pull through all of the loops, and then you just have to chain 1 and then cluster again. Sorry, it's just 1 wrap only, sorry. I've been doing so much trouble with this whole thing. I've got that in my mind, and so I do another treble, or sorry, another cluster, and then chain 1, and then I cluster once again. So there's a total of 3 clusters all within this, and now we're gonna move down the other side of this shawl. So you're going to chain 2, skip the first 2, and then go to the third and double crochet 7 in a row, and then you know what to do. So 7 in a row, skip 2, cluster into the next, skip 2, and then 7 in a row. So please do that all the way down the other side for row number 18. So I'm coming up to the end of row number 18, and I've got my 7 double crochets in a row, and you're thinking you're gonna run out of stitches, but you're not. It's all good, so don't panic. And so I have a total of 6 in there. I have 2 more yet to go, so I'm gonna double crochet into the next one. It gives me my 7, and I have one last one to go, and that's awesome. So I want to chain 2 first and then double crochet right into the very final turning chain. So that was like your chain 5 that you had started with in the very beginning. So let's move on to row number 19. Let's bring you back to the diagram, show you what's going on next. So we're gonna start row number 19, and we're gonna chain up a total of 3. It doesn't really count as anything, and then we're gonna cluster right into the starting double crochet that we had before, chain 2 and cluster right back in again, and then chain 2. But what I want you to watch out for is these double crochets here, they're not actually in a stitch, they're in a space between the stitch. You see how they're lined up perfectly in the rows below? That means that they're right into the stitch, but they're not lined up here. That means that we're going into the space, and I did read the pattern to confirm that. So there's a total of 6 in the spaces, chain 2, and then you're going to cluster into this other cluster, chain 2, and then cluster once again here, and then chain 2, and then this area right here is right into the spaces once again, and there's a total of 6, and you carry on. So let's try row number 19, and then we'll get you to closest to the corner and then pick you up again from that point. So let's begin, and we're going to chain 3. So 1, 2, and 3 doesn't really count as anything, it's just a builder, and then we're going to cluster into that same stitch right below. So just do your cluster as you normally do it with the 3 times, pull through all 4 loops, and you're going to chain 2 and then cluster once again into that same stitch. Pull through all loops, and now you're going to chain 2, and you're gonna come now to the 7 that you see. So you're not gonna go into the 7 stitches, you're gonna go right in between the space. So go right in between the first one and the second, and you're going to double crochet right into the space itself, and then move to the next one, go right into the space. You're doing a total of 6 of these in a row. You rarely see this in a pattern. Doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but it's really awesome to say the least. So you're doing a total of right between the spaces, so there's only 6 that you see there, and now we're gonna start up again doing cluster work. So we're gonna chain 2, and then you're going to go right in the top of the cluster and cluster once again. And as you get your cluster done, chain 2 and then cluster once again into that same one. So you're kind of making one cluster turn into 2 in this row. Then chain 2 and then start up again. So you have your 7 in a row and start in the very beginning space. Okay, so right after the first one but before the second, and double crochet 6 in a row. So that's all you're gonna do for row number 19, and then what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna get you to do this, and we'll meet back up at the point and show you what to do there, and then we'll carry on for that. So if you just recall, you're just going in between the spaces, and now that you're done that, chain 2, you're gonna cluster, chain 2, cluster again, chain 2, and then do it again in between the spaces. So I'll see you at the point at this particular spot. So row number 19, we're now heading to the point, as you can see, and now there's 3 clusters here. Now we're gonna make them into 6 clusters this time around. So I'm now in the spaces in between with the 6, and now I'm gonna chain 2 before I begin the corner. So in the first cluster I want to do a total of 1 cluster so far. So just do that. I'll just walk you through it. And then chain 2 and then do another cluster into the same one. So what we're gonna do is that each one of these clusters in the corner we're gonna convert into 2 this time. So once you get the second one done, chain 2 and then move to the next cluster and do a cluster and then chain 2 and then a cluster into the same one. So here comes my second cluster for that middle one. I have never done a project like this, by the way, just so you know. This is kind of neat. It's nice to do something different. So chaining up 2 and then I'm gonna cluster finally into the third one, and I'm gonna then chain 2 and then do another cluster. Make sure you chain 2 between them. That'll keep it nice and open for you. I'm still doing this trouble wrapping. I don't know what my problem is. Okay, so continuing that. and then chain 2, and now you're gonna start again. So there's your 7. So you're just gonna start immediately after you've done your chain 2 and just double crochet in the spaces again only 6 times in a row, and then you're chaining 2, and then your next cluster then will be a cluster, chain 2, cluster into the same one. So please do that all the way to the other side, and I'll see you over there in just a moment. So let's finish up row number 19 together and just making my way, and I'm just in between the stitches. Here on the end there should only be 6, and here it is. I can see that there's only 6, and now in order to finish this I need to chain 2, and on the outside one here I want to go the 3rd stitch up, and I want to go right into that actual turning chain, and I want to put in a cluster. So 1, so I just wrap my hook and making my cluster, pull through, chain 2, and cluster all into the same one, and then that concludes off row number 19. Okay, and then just that's it. So what I want to do then at this particular point is that I'm going to just turn my work, and we're gonna move up to row number 20 together, and this is exactly where we are at this point. So let's bring back that chart and see what we're getting ourselves into this time. So in row number 20 we're gonna immediately start up, and this double crochet counts as 3 chains and then 3, so we're gonna chain a total of 6. We're starting on the other side and we're coming back, so just so you know. So right in the chain 2 space we want to cluster, and then chain 2, and then cluster, and then we're gonna chain 3, and then immediately go in between the spaces again for 5 in a row, and then chain 3, and then in the chain 2 space we're gonna do a cluster, chain 2, cluster, chain 3, and so on. So let's start on row number 20. So let's begin row number 20. We're gonna chain a total of 6. So 1, 2, 3, that's your double crochet, and 4, 5, 6, that's your 3 chains that you need. So you're just gonna immediately just jump in between the 2 clusters, just pull them apart if you can, if you don't see it already, and you're going to cluster 1 time. So just do 1 cluster, and then a total of chain 2, and then cluster once again. So you're doing that right between the other 2 clusters in the row below, like so. So now you're gonna chain 3, and now you're gonna just look, and you have 6 that you can see, go right in between the space after the first one and just double crochet for that one plus 4 more, so it gives you a total of 5 in a row. You really can't go wrong and miss that if you're keeping your counts, because honestly after you get this one done, that right now you can see that there's no others that exist, and there's only a total of 5. So chain 3, so 1, 2, 3, and then you're gonna go right in between the other 2 clusters that are there, and you're gonna cluster. Okay, and then chain 2 and cluster once again. Okay, and then chain 3. So 1, 2, 3, and then go along, so you see your next 6 down there, so just go in between, and so you can only do 5 in a row. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So that's all you need to do to go across on row number 20. So then just chain 3, cluster, chain 2, cluster into the next one, then chain 3, and then begin again. I'll see you at the point on row number 20. So we're now hitting the point. So I've just chained my 3, so I've just done my 5 here, and I've chained 3, and now we're gonna do some cluster work, but we've got to turn the corner at the same time. So we're gonna go in between the first 2 clusters. Okay, so we're gonna go right in between there, and we are going to cluster, chain 2, and cluster once again. So we're doing that right in between the other 2 that already exist. And now you want to start turning the corner, so you're gonna chain 3. So 1, 2, 3, so, and then come into the next group of 2. Do you see that? Go right into the middle one. That's the middle of the group of 2, and I want you to cluster again there, and then chain 2 and cluster once again in that same spot. Once you got that done, chain 3. So 1, 2, 3, and now you got your final set of clusters that are in the corner, and you're gonna cluster again, chain 2 to separate them, and go back into the same spot and cluster once again. Okay, so that's it. So your corner is done. You've just successfully turned. So you're gonna chain 3 to begin again, and so you're just gonna come and you're gonna go right in between the spaces. You see the 6 that are there, double crochet in between the first and the second one, right into the space. Just like that, and then chain 3 and then cluster, chain 2, cluster, then chain 3 and then go right into the space again. So this is row number 20. I continue to do it and I'll see you at the end of this row. So I'm coming to the end of row number 20, so I just want to chain 3 and then I'm going right in there and I'm going right in between the 2 clusters and I'm gonna cluster again. Okay, and then I'm chaining 2, 1 and 2, and then I'm clustering once again. But we're not quite done this time. Last time we finished on a cluster, this time we're not. We're gonna chain 3, so 1, 2 and 3, and right in the top of this section right here, okay, we're going to put in a double crochet. So that brings it back into balance, just like you see. So this is row number 20. So let's move along to 21. So let's move along to 21. We're gonna start immediately and we're gonna chain a total of 7, and then we're going to cluster into the first one, chain 2 and cluster again. It's right in between, and then we're gonna chain 4 and then fill in the spots. There's only 4 double crochets this time. Chain 4, cluster, chain 2, cluster, and then chain 4 and then fill it in. Let's move along to row number 21. So let's move along to number 21. We're gonna chain a total of 7. So 1, 2, 3, and that's your double crochet, 4, 5, 6 and 7, and that's your chain 4 space. So you're just gonna immediately go right into the first between the 2 first clusters, and you're gonna cluster in, and then you're gonna chain 2 and then cluster once again, and then pull through it there. And now this time we're gonna chain 4. So 1, 2, 3 and 4, and we're immediately just looking here. You can only go in the spaces. This means that there's only gonna be 4 left this time. So right in between the space, double crochet, and keep doing that until you run out of space really. And there you go. All the spaces are now used, and chain 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and then cluster in between the next clusters. Chain 2, cluster again, and now we're ready again. So chain 4. So 1, 2, 3 and 4. Come in between the next spaces that you see. There's only 4 there, and just double crochet. So please do all this to the point, and I'll see you there in just a moment. So now I'm making my way to the point right here, and I've just done my 4 in a row here. So chain 4. So 1, 2, 3 and 4. So come to the first one of the corner and you're gonna put in a cluster, followed by a chain 2 and then cluster once again. Okay, and now that your cluster is done, chain 4. So 1, 2, 3 and 4, and then just come to the next one. So this is the middle one of the group of 3. Go and cluster in between the first that group there, then chain 2 and cluster once again, and then chain 4. So 1, 2, 3 and 4, and then go right into the next group of between the next group of clusters and cluster again, chain 2 and cluster again. In the next row we're gonna start really expanding on these things, but we're not quite there yet. So now that you have your corner now completely done, we're now going to move around. So chain 4. So 1, 2, 3 and 4, and then just go in between the spaces again. There's only 4 this time of double crochet. So you can either count it if you're not confident, but if you're confident like me, you just gotta fill in the space and then once you have that done, there's only 4 there, chain 4. So 1, 2, 3 and 4, and then just cluster in between the next group. Followed by chain 2 and cluster once again, and then chain 4 and then start again with the double crochets. Please do that, and this is going to be the conclusion of row number 21. So coming up to the conclusion of row number 21, I'm chaining 4, and then I'm just going right in between the last 2 clusters here, and I'm putting on a cluster. Okay, and then chain 2 and then cluster once again, but we're not quite done yet. So before we do that, we have to chain 4. So 1, 2, 3 and 4, and then what we just want to do is that we looking at all of these stitches here, we need to make sure that we go into the 3rd stitch. So 1, 2 and 3, and you're gonna double crochet in that into position just like so. So it should look like that. Okay, so let's move along to row number 22. So row number 22, we're going to start up and we're going to chain 3, and then we're gonna double crochet into the same one. We're actually coming from the other direction up, and that's what that double crochet means. So chain up 3, double crochet into the same one, and then chain 3, and then in between the next clusters, we're gonna cluster, chain 2, cluster, chain 2, and then cluster once again, and then chain 3, and then fill in the space. There's only 3 this time, and then chain 3, and then in between the next clusters, it's cluster, chain 2, cluster, chain 2, and cluster once again, then chain 3 and fill in the spaces. Let's do this for number 22. This is the 3rd last row of this whole project. So let's start row number 22. We're gonna chain up 3, which counts as a double crochet, and in the same one that you're in, you want to double crochet one more time. So there's a total of 2, and now you're gonna chain 3. So 1, 2 and 3. So here's your clusters. Just make sure you separate them so that you can easily see them, and you're going to cluster one time in there so far. So this time you're gonna make 3 clusters total. So chain 2, cluster once again, and normally we've just been putting 2 clusters into each space, but not this time. And you're gonna chain 2 and then cluster once again. So each one of these spaces will have 3 clusters into them, and that includes the corners as well. So chain, pull through all of them. So then let's begin again. So chain up 3, and let's move along. So you're going to go in between the spaces. There's only 3 this time for a double crochet. So you're running out of those stitches there, but you're making up for these clusters that are now expanding. So chain 3, and now in between this one here, just like you would all the way across. So cluster, chain 2, cluster, chain 2, cluster, and then chain 3, and then fill in the spaces. Please do this all the way for row number 22. We'll see you at the first corner. So let's cover how to do the corner. So I've just did my filling in of 3, chaining of 3, and now I'm pretty sure that you understand this pattern by now. So what I'm gonna just tell you the instructions. So in between the first 2 clusters, okay, you're going to cluster, chain 2, cluster, chain 2, cluster, and then you're gonna chain 3 again, and then do the same thing here. So let me just do the first one just to make sure you get it. So we're gonna cluster, and then chain 2, and then cluster once again. So we're converting all of these clusters down into groups of 3, and then chain 2, and then cluster once again. Okay, and to move on, you're gonna chain 3. So 1, 2, 3, and then do the same thing into the next group right over here. So just going in. So do this for your corner, and then I'll just pick you back up at the I might as well just stick it out here. I'll just carry on with you. Sometimes it's just faster to do it than it is to turn off the camera. Okay, so I'm just doing my clusters, then chain 3, and then moving across. Okay, so I go to the next one. Chain 2, cluster again. So I'm just going at my regular speed because I think you actually understand the pattern by now. Again, I've never done a project like this. So once you get that group done, chain 3, so 1, 2, 3, and then move across, then just filling in the between the double crochet. There's only 3 in a row, and then again you'll be into your clusters once again right after this. So before you begin that, chain 3. So the clusters again, cluster, chain 2, cluster, chain 2, cluster, and then keep on moving. So this will be the conclusion, and I'll see you at the end of row number 22. So I'm coming up to the end of row number 22, and again the last cluster you're gonna make it into 3 this time. I think if anything that's gonna slow you down in this particular pattern is the whole idea of doing these clusters, but honestly I think that's what makes it really quite interesting as well. So we're just making them into 3s this time around, and then watch what we're going to do then for the end. Once you get the last one in, chain 4, or sorry, chain 3, so 1, 2, and 3, and in the third chain up from here, so count it, so 1, 2, and 3, I want you to double crochet 2 times. So go right into the actual chain itself, not to an actual gap, and double crochet 2 times into there to bring off row number 22. So let's turn our work and let's move on to row number 23, second last row. So let's move along to row number 23. We're going to chain up 3, which counts as a double crochet, and then double crochet to the same one, chain up 3, and now what we're going to do is split these 3, and we're gonna go cluster, chain 2, cluster into the first split, chain 2, and then come to the other side and split it. So cluster, chain 2, and cluster, and then chain 3, and then just fill this in the middle, and again we're just gonna split these clusters off for row number 23. Let's begin to do that next. So let's begin to do row number 23. We're gonna chain up 3, which counts as a double crochet, and we're gonna double crochet into the same one right underneath. So then you have apparently 2. So we're gonna chain up 3, and now we're going to come to these group of 3 clusters that you have, and you're gonna go in between the first and the second one, and you're going to cluster, and then chain 2, and then cluster once again right into that same spot. Once you get that done, then you're going to chain 2, and then just jump to the other space. So here's the middle cluster, here's the last one. So just go into this one here, and you're going to cluster again, chain 2, and then cluster once again in there. So you're really getting into 4 clusters at this particular point, and it's being split between the 2 gapping spaces. And then once you get that done, then you're ready to move on, and you're going to chain 3, and then you're just gonna fill the spaces in of the double crochet. There's only 2 left this time, and then chain 3, and then moving on you have 3 that are here. To put a cluster here, chain 2, cluster, and then chain 2, and then go to the other side, cluster, chain 2, and cluster, and then chain 3, and then begin again moving across. So please do that. I'll see you at the point. So we're now heading to the corner just like you see. So we're gonna divide off each one again into 2. So like we did before, how we split them up like this and that there's 2, we're doing the same thing over in the corner for each one of these. So let's chain up 3, which I've already done, and I'm coming in between the first 2 clusters, and I'm gonna cluster, and then chain 2, and then cluster once again into the same one. Okay, and now we're gonna chain 2, and now cluster into the next one right beside it, and you're gonna divide that one again. Okay, so chain 2 and then cluster once again. So now you got 4 clusters working together for that one section, and now you're ready to move on to the next one here. So to get there first you have to chain 3, so 1, 2, and 3, and again cluster, 2 chains, cluster, and then move along and fill them in. So I'll see you at the end of this point, and then we'll just carry on from this point here. So I just finished the corner as you see here. Now I'm ready to move on. I've chained 3, and then I'm just gonna put my double crochets in between the spaces. There's only 2 this time like there was before. Chain 3, and then this here clusters that you see, there's 3 here, you're gonna divide those. So cluster, chain 2, cluster, then chain 2, and then do the same thing. Cluster, chain 2, and cluster, then chain 3, and keep on moving down. So please do this all the way to row number 23. I'll see you at the end of this row. So I'm coming up to the end of row number 23, and I'm just did my last set of clusters, and I'm chaining 3, and then right at the very top of the turning chain I'm going to put in 2 double crochets to finish, like so. So we've got only one more row to go. We're gonna go labor intensive on the clusters to give this the final look that it deserves, and you can see it looks really quite amazing. So let's begin row number 24 next. Row number 24 is gonna start up, and we're gonna chain a total of 3, but look what we're gonna do with these clusters. So the first between the 2 group, it's gonna be cluster, chain 2, cluster, then chain 2, and there's gonna be lots of chain 2s in between these, and then in the space between these 2 here, you are going to put in 3 clusters that are separated by chain 2, chain 2 again, and then right in this section is 2 clusters again that's separated with the chain 2. And then you're just gonna immediately, once you get that last cluster, just double crochet right in the space in between, and then start it again. So you can see we're just filling these all up, and you're actually doing the whole thing all the way across, including the corners. It's the exact same thing as you go across. The only difference on the corner is that there is a chain 2 when you're separating those out in order to keep the bend. So you're not doing your chain 2s in this section here because there is no because there's a double crochet here but there isn't here. So make sure you watch for that as you go all the way around. So let me just make sure that you're getting that, and let's go on to row number 24 and finalize for today. So let's begin. We're going to chain 3, which counts as a double crochet, and we're immediately gonna come to where the clusters are and go right in between the first and the second one, and you're going to cluster once in, and then chain 2, and then cluster once again into that same one. Okay, you got that done. So now chain 2. So this is gonna be come into the next space between the next 2, so it's kind of like the middle one of the group. That's why it's gonna have 3 clusters this time. So start with a cluster, and then chain 2, and then cluster once again. So this is kind of the middle one of them all, and then chain 2, and then cluster one more time. So this middle one will have 3 clusters. And now you're gonna move on. So you're gonna chain 2, and then you just come between the next group that you see here, and you're gonna cluster first, chain 2, and then cluster. Okay, so once you get that last cluster in, normally what we've been doing is that we've been adding chains, but we're not going to. We're just gonna immediately stretch right over, and we're gonna double crochet in between that other one that's already there. So that'll pull it nice and over for you, so you have a nice finished look. So this is the final row. So you're just gonna restart again. So you're just gonna go in between the first 2 clusters and put in 2 clusters that are separated by chain 2. You're gonna go into the middle one, and you're gonna put 3 in there that are separated by chain 2, and then come to the next one here. There's gonna be 2 in there separated by chain 2, and then you're just gonna reach over and double crochet right into here. So please do that, and I'll meet you at the corner in just a moment. So I'm currently working almost closest to the corner, and I'm just doing everything as you already know it across. And so I'm in the first section of the corner here, and I want to show you the difference between this corner or these clusters and the rest of them. So I'm just finalizing the final cluster in for this grouping. Okay. So what we had here is that we have the first section coming in, and before we've been leaning over and just double crocheting in and then immediately starting the next one. But because there's a corner and there's no double crochet here, we just have to chain 2, okay, and immediately start then again this grouping of over here in the corner. So in the corners here we don't worry about that double crochet that we have to lean over towards. We just have to keep just spacing everything by just chaining of 2. So please do this all the way, and we're gonna carry on in this one. This is the final round, and I bet you'll be glad to get this done as well, because it's now starting to look amazing. So I'll be back in just a moment. So as I finish off this final corner, this is the last time I'm going through. I'm now back to where this double crochets are. I just finished this last section of the clusters, so I just lean over and just double crochet in the middle and then restart and work my way down the other side. So please do that, and I'll see the end of this round, round number 24, which is the final round for this shawl. So I'm coming up to the end of row number 24, which is the final, and I'm just doing my last set of clusters. If I don't do any more clusters for a while, I'll be okay with that. So I got my last set of clusters in, and I'm just gonna lean over and into the top of the turning chain. It is gonna be a double crochet, and I am done. So that's all I need to do. So in order to get rid of this loose end, all you're just gonna do, let me just show you to do that. Might as well put all this work into it. So just pull through, and I'm just gonna throw that yarn through my darning needle. So of course if you're gonna wear this, you don't want your loose ends hanging out everywhere either. So you just want to make sure that you just glide it through the stitch work. Okay, just kind of up underneath, just about an inch or so. Glide it up underneath and pull through. Don't provide too much tension to it, and then go back in the other direction for 2, and then go back in the other direction for 3. So third time is a charm. So coming all the way across, let it go, and then just use your scissors and trim. So that's how you do this, and this is a really neat shawl. This was a labored tussive here in this area, but I think it turned out really good. So until next time, I'm Mikey on behalf of the Crochet Crowd as well as Yarnspirations.com. Have a great day. We'll see you again real soon. Bye bye.